Hello, everybody. Brian H. Waters here, back with the lovely, the one and only, Miss Queen P.R. Well, the last thing we did was the Love and WWE review?
I think so.
Yeah, at least for public consumption.
Yeah, we reviewed Bianca Montez's reality show, which was fun because we binged it in one sitting and then recorded our instant reactions. So that was awesome.
Yeah, we did. We went through that. That's how good it was.
It was good.
And shout out to them. You know, they gave us a lot of love on that. So we truly appreciate Bianca Montez. And also shout out to Angelo Dawkins, who was in there. He recently got married.
Congratulations, Dawkins.
Yeah. Dope fit. Him and the family.
So, I love the complete difference there is between Montez and Dawkins. Like, they're like completely opposite. And how dope is it to have a friend, your best friend probably, officiate your wedding?
Right.
Somebody who is in a beautiful, loving marriage for a few years now, and them being able to give that sort of energy has to be incredible.
Well, today we're here to discuss something that may, we thought we knew a lot, thought we probably knew everything. That being WCW, who killed WCW. One of the things we talked about was what Vice TV gets right. So you want to go into that first before we jump in?
Yeah, I think because Vice sort of just kind of came out of nowhere with Dark Side of the Ring and just sort of changed the game for mainstream wrestling documentaries. You hear a lot of these stories on YouTube, the era, basically the content that came out of the shoot interview era on YouTube, where there wasn't really a platform yet where Kevin Nash could really like tell it like it was, or you could find out like who the sluts were backstage and those sorts of conversations. And if you remember the shoot interview era, please put it in the comments, because that there was some real gems in there that we would probably never get that trust that wrestlers had to just sit in front of a camera and just tell stories that you've like never told before. Really, peeling back the curtain. So the only like real sort of stories being told was from the WWE perspective, which is amazing, but it's one company's narrative about a very vast industry that goes back even way before WWE even existed in the way that we know it now. So for Vice to sort of tap into that audience that would appreciate, a documentary on New Jack, or, because you're never gonna, like, when would we have ever heard New Jack's story? And I think that's something that Vice really got right and I think that's the brand of Vice, is telling the stories that wouldn't necessarily be told by mainstream media, that like underbelly of certain cultures and industries. And Dark Side of the Ring just like nails that. And I think that is what Vice gets right about wrestling documentaries, the nerve. Also, like, who was gonna really cover Owen Hart's death, like the last days of Owen Hart? You know what I mean? Like, that's such a sensitive topic in the industry. Like, WWE doesn't even touch it. Even the Chris Benoit episodes and those kind of like taboo subjects, I think is one of the things that make Vice docs really, really interesting compared to, what we're used to.
Yeah, I would be interested to know what got rejected, right? Because you brought up a good point. Chris Benoit, Owen Hart. How can I say this? There was a time where wrestling fans were clamoring for Owen Hart to get in the Hall of Fame. Even during Mark Henry's Hall of Fame speech, he made a call to Martha. I'm not sure, like, my timeline, I don't know exactly like when Mark Henry's Hall of Fame speech, but I don't know. Do you remember watching that?
I don't.
Okay, yeah. So like, and because I wasn't sure if it was a time when you was away from the business, and I was sitting there and I remember he was, it was like a plea, like, it's been long enough. We love Owen. Just let his legacy come home, right?
Yeah.
I, a lot of wrestler fans felt that way, but I kid you not. I think after that documentary, the noise like fell. You didn't hear too many people saying that. And it just goes to show you that the work that Jason and Evan do for to be trusted by Martha Hart,
Mm.
who, and then to hear from, and what did it for me was hearing the kids when they said, yeah, we just don't like wrestling. We think
Right.
about like I took it, our dad from us, and it was because of wrestling. And I felt for those kids. And I felt like, they, when you see something wrestling and Vice, it's like, oh, this is going to be good. You're going to learn something new.
Yeah.
I never heard of Herb Abrams.
Right.
you know,
Those type of stories, and then being able to get the interviews with certain family members
mm-hmm.
is a big one. I think that Vice has, and telling the really dark stories. Like I think about the China documentary. It wasn't a Dark Side of the Ring. A lot of people think it is or was just because it is like really dark. But it was a part of another series that they have called Versus. I think Versus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get the name of that. But
Vice
they
versa.
told the darkest time in China's life, and I that's not even rewatchable for me because it really it's heartbreaking. But I that's the brand of Vice, and wrestling is the perfect business or culture to really peel back that curtain and to really show the underbelly of it. Because at one point, let's be real, the wrestling business was extremely toxic from
Mm-hmm.
the top to the bottom. Like it was extremely toxic. And if you went into it, you kind of knew it was, and you just tried to sort of navigate as much as you can. This is, you had to love it to be in it. And then Vice covers that part of it as well. The Wrestlers series that they have where they kind of go around and interview like a lot of the indie promotions and the death matches and stuff like that. So they really tell a lot of the stories of the undercurrent of the business that kind of keep it moving and keep the
Yeah.
interest going and really makes you appreciate the craft and the dedication that these people put into it. So I really hope that The Rock and his production company continue to work with Vice and get and put on more shows like that. And when it comes to Who Killed WCW, like I was one of the main ones that was talking the most shit about it because when I heard that The Rock was doing that, he did Tale of the Territories, which was interesting, roundtables with people that lived it. And it's also, just to go back to other Vice docs, like Tale of the Territories, one of those things that's really important because it's almost like when you interview your grandparents at Thanksgiving, where it's like you got to get these stories before they are gone, and our legacy is gone too. Like I look at Tale of the Territories, where it's like, let's get these people in a room now and get
Mm-hmm.
some of the behind the scenes stories on these now while we can. And it's gonna be kind of like a time capsule at some point, which I think is cool. And also, like me and we've watched a few of them, and I think what's really cool about them too is seeing these people get together and reminisce. Like it's kind of a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to see because they get to talk about things they probably either have talked about a million times or haven't talked about it in a while, and it just gives them so much joy to like relive or stories they haven't told before or people that probably haven't been in the same room for a while but have this shared history that like it feels almost like mythical in a sense because them
Mm-hmm.
territory days was wild. You like,
I mean, you
wait,
talking
what
about eye
happened?
gouging, and then being able to see like Kevin Von Erich, especially somebody who's been through
Hmm.
so much of what he's been through. He told his story on Dark Side of the Ring, and it was like wow. Like you see the WWE documentary, but then you see this, and you're like, oh wait, it was dark,
Hmm.
and then for people who watched the Iron Claw like we did, it was for us watching the Iron Claw was just like not that we were immune to it, but it was like
Right.
we
We know that
knew.
we know what happened.
Yeah, but and the funny part was like people saying, "Wait, that really happened?" Like, yeah, it's darker, and you see the darker side on Dark Side of the Ring. So him being able to just have the Tales of the Territories, to be able to sit, because it is that brother and that sisterhood in professional wrestling. And
Right.
with Jeff Jarrett, him getting his flowers and him really putting over his grandmother, and then the Polynesian family, with the Rock's
Right.
family. And so that's why when I did see this, and I've listened to Brian Gewirtz talk about it on the Masked Man show, I was like, okay, I'm not, just say, worried that it's going to be the same story over and over again, um but I'm interested to know your first time, because we've had the WCW conversation publicly and privately, as far as your fandom or lack of. But when did you first come across like the rise and fall of WCW?
Like the story of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say pretty early in my whole getting back into wrestling and just like looking online for all the content I can look for. And a lot of the like the failures of WCW would come up, like the what cultures of the world. They love talking about the botched storylines and like all that stuff. So that's when I feel like I first started getting into that. I would say maybe like 2013, maybe
Mm-hmm.
2014. And then I watched the doc on WWE Network.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like really fascinated. And then the Monday Night Wars docu-series I loved. Like it was like,
Yes.
because that's really a rise and fall of WCW story, when you
Mm-hmm.
really think about it. And that was really good. So I kind of was always looking forward to consuming any sort of content that talked about it because I didn't grow up watching WCW. So I really come into this from a perspective that just like really enjoys the sort of storytelling. And also I like stories that kind of share like what the pop culture vibe was at the time. And the history of WCW really tells you like where media was at the time. It tells you where the attitudes of society were at the time. Like it tells like so many different stories. There's like so many different layers to it. So I always found that interesting. And anything, shout out to the ringer. I'm a nostalgia freak. I like anything that brings you back to a time that you could never like. It just existed in that time. Like little things like channel switching. Like the Monday Night Wars wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that idea of keeping people on that channel. Like I love that connection to like that era. I love watching clips of Nitro because if it's so 90s. Like it's so 90s. And I think because it
Mm-hmm.
only can exist in that time, like, WWE, it goes back, we're still watching WWE. So like you watch the old stuff knowing that there is also going to be an evolution of it. But like
Mm-hmm.
Nitro is so, it has to exist in that era.
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of like
Yeah.
brings you back a little bit. So I was kind of like fascinated in those ways. And then it wasn't until I read, because then at some point I was like, okay, I can't like consume it. Like 83 Weeks came out with Eric Bischoff, which like once he tells most of that story in that podcast, something to wrestle with, like hearing from like the WWE exec side of the Monday Night Wars, I was like, okay, like it's enough. But then I read Nitro,
Uh-huh.
and that was huge because that like shared a whole new perspective about it. But you grew up watching
Mm-hmm.
WCW, so you sort of lived through the Monday Night Wars. Like as once you got older and kind of was learning more about the business, like when did you get interested in the war per se?
I guess to say like everybody I was surrounded with was, there wasn't nobody who was like loyal to WCW, right? There was, I think there's one time I can remember being in like the doctor's office or a nail salon with my mother, and I remember hearing like, how you had like those random memories. I'm my godbrother says I'm an elephant sometimes. Um,
Oh,
there was a time I remember kids talking and they said, well, I like WCW better because they got Sting, they got the Z-Man, which is 90s, like Tom Zink, 90s
I don't
WCW.
even know.
And this is like, I'm like, wait, what? Because at this time, Hogan's still in WWF. He's at the end, but it's like Bret Hart and all them. But then, like my parents got rid of cable at the wrong time because they got rid of it in June of '97, right? So from June of '97 to June of '98, I had no wrestling. I forgot about WCW Worldwide on TV. Forgot about Shotgun Saturday Night. So I have like no ties to wrestling. So when I finally get back into it, even by the time I got back into it, WWE they were still trading blows, but you wasn't going to tell anybody that, like, if you were watching. The reason why, in my opinion, looking back at WCW was winning the war because the product wasn't so bad where you was completely turned off.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like if there was a time around the mid 2010s, I want to say like 2015, where all the people who are pretty much on top, your AJ Styles, your Kevin Owens, all of those people, the Tamatonga and them, they was all in ROH, right? If they were to have had, they were in ROH in New Japan. If they would have had an AEW around that time, you could have made an argument, would have been a war, but WWE wouldn't have lost it yet, just on the simple fact of the habit. The product wasn't, people try to say the product was horrible. It wasn't that bad. It just wasn't as good as it is now, right? So that was the thing about WCW at the time. But there was like, the people I was around was always, I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin was on TV every night. So who was you really gonna say Goldberg was better? So like my memory of the exact war, I was oblivious to it being a war, if that makes any sense. It was just like, okay, you got two wrestler shows that come on at the same time. I knew like they were competing with each other, but I didn't get caught up. It wasn't tribalism. That's the word I've been looking for.
Ah, okay.
It wasn't tribalism.
That had to be fun then.
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably a time where it was like, because, we were listening to something to wrestle with recently. We're talking about the ratings in a May 98 episode of Raw that drew in 4.5 million people. So that is compared to, let's say, I'm just throwing a number out there, 3.7 million for WCW. That means collectively, I seemingly 7 million people were watching wrestling. I don't think people were trying to convince other people to watch the other product. I think everyone was just enjoying the fact that there was so much cool wrestling to watch. And just thinking about those sorts of numbers, and anyone that was born after 90 or 95 probably can't even fathom that, because ratings, I mean, if a show, I think only sports probably get those numbers now on a regular basis. But that was insane. I think it was just the excitement of that and the fact,
and the joy of the VCR, because you hear a lot of people. So my dad's sister, her husband, their kids, they were the family. They was like, they ordered every single pay-per-view, but they also taped both Raw and Nitro in different rooms. So you would have people say, okay, which one are you watching? And my grandmother, may she rest in peace, I was a little bit spoiled. When I would go over her house, like during a spring break or during a week in the summer, right? She would let me record Nitro in her room during that block, which is like, now you think about it, it's like, well, she really let me tie up her TV. Now she liked wrestling and she preferred Nitro because it had more wrestling, but make no mistake about it, she liked her some Stone Cold Steve Austin now. And The Rock. But she let me tie up that TV so I could record that and then record Raw on, say, like my aunt's television. And I would be back and forth in the room. But there's also times where, and I wish I still had my VHSs, where you actually see me changing the channel. And now imagine like you watching the tape somebody let you borrow, and then you see.
My God.
Like that was the thing people would never understand. And like my Uncle Mike, he rest in peace, he would do the same thing. And sometimes like he would like, hey, Brian, I dropped Raw off, and I'm like, what? Oh, he's watching. So you would see people's TV habits while they changing the channels. Because
That's so wild now.
we didn't have streaming. We like on a Wednesday night, WWE is going to drop their documentary about WrestleMania, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're going right at AEW's neck." Yes, in a sense, right? But I mean, at the same time, people can go back and watch it. That's why the Nielsen ratings and stuff has changed, where
Yeah.
you're measuring DVR numbers and stuff. So all that stuff it was interesting, man, and
Yes.
I really missed that time.
Me
I
too.
hate a lot of times that there is so much tribalism, you
Right.
know.
But I do think, like people say a lot of times, like the opinion of fans all on social media is normally the minority.
Mhm.
Like, so there's tribalism, but you've been to shows. Like, it's all a really, really good time. So let's get into the Who Killed WCW documentary.
Mhm.
Because, we talked about how we were very interested in this story in general being told. We've consumed a lot of documentaries and videos and thought pieces, and everyone having their opinion on it, as well as the people that were there. And we weren't necessarily excited when Seven Bucks Productions said that they were going to do a docuseries on this, because we were like, okay, what more can we learn? And I feel like Nitro is the best book out there on this. And I think it got a lot of its inspiration from that book, because what I liked about it was that it told the perspective of the corporations that owned
Yes.
this wrestling property, and from their perspective. Because if you talk to the average person, who killed WCW, Eric Bischoff, the WCW execs, they tied my hands, they did this, they did that, but you never hear from the executive side. So they do a really good job of doing that, as well as that Nitro book. So let's talk about the Turner execs for a second.
Mhm.
What sort of surprised you the most when they talked about Turner Broadcasting, the AOL merger, the suits that were put in charge of this wrestling company, their relationship with Eric Bischoff? What was something that sort of surprised you about that?
The fact that Ted Turner had zero power when the merger came. Like
Mm,
I thought it was like one of those things where it says, okay, we all now everybody got to make a joint decision, and he got overruled. I
right.
ain't know this dude wasn't being invited to the meetings and
Harsh.
everything. So that was the biggest surprise when it came to execs, because we had heard the stories about Ted Turner loved wrestling so much it went in the red, but he didn't care. They even, did a little something on Heels, where, spoiler alert, if you ain't watched it, where, the father goes and tries to meet with Ted
Mhm.
Turner. So we knew, like, basically he's using his money to profit his playground,
His
with
hobby, like his hobby.
his hobby. And and had gave people jobs and stuff. But when I saw like how the merger went down, that was the biggest shock. I was like, oh wow, no wonder like he ain't have no power.
Yeah, that was shocking, because you think of the Titan he was. And
Mm-hmm.
he was able to write blank checks to Eric Bischoff, like to make. I love WCW. I love wrestling on my network. Do whatever you need to do to make it successful. He used it to fuel other personal petty beefs that he had, which gave us some amazing wrestling moments.
Yeah,
Um, but
talk
yeah,
about it.
it was shocking to hear that he couldn't save his baby anymore. He couldn't save Eric Bischoff. He couldn't save them from dumping it from their portfolio, and just even the terms, like the business terms. Like, at the end of the day, WCW was a line item in a list
Mm-hmm.
of properties that was owned by these media conglomerates. At the end of the day, now,
Yeah.
people involved in WCW, it felt like they're everything. It was, they lived and breathed it, as people that work in wrestling tend to feel. But when it came to dollars and cents, at the end of the day, this got to go.
Ooh.
And, that's sometimes just like, how it is, especially
Mm-hmm.
if the person that's championing it is not there to have a say. It's bleeding the company by millions. And even the dispute between how much money is lost, it's still millions.
Yeah.
So, like, either way, like, this is insane and it's just not going to work anymore. Um, I do like that it goes to the perception of wrestling TV shows where
Mm-hmm.
these people were still like, why do we have this? Why do we have this? This is nothing. It was losing a lot of money, but it also was bringing in millions of viewers every single week.
Yeah.
So, also, another business aspect of it all, that's a prime time spot that they had. They were prime time television on
Yeah.
Monday nights. And if you want to make your business portfolio a little more sophisticated, the first thing you're going to do is take the wrestling program off,
That's why I love doing content with you, because
especially if it's not
it's,
making money.
it's
We
spot
also
on.
learned that there wasn't a lot of advertiser support
Mm-hmm.
for the product.
And I feel like it was, it just got sabotaged down the line, you know, because like 97, 98, post NWO, like during the NWO, I should say, you saw wrestling everywhere, and WCW saved the wrestling business, if we being honest, because if it wasn't for that, we hear the stories about WWE being in the black, I mean the red, and to the point they couldn't even, what they said, didn't even have couldn't even use, like, they had to take out the water coolers, you
Mm,
know. So we hear those stories, and you think about, if there was no WCW, it wouldn't have forced WWE to change its hand.
facts.
I mean, we could say ECW did, and ECW probably had ideas, but at the end of the day, it wasn't like it was a big promotion. It wasn't like,
Right. It wasn't going to
so
put WWE out of business.
right where
It was
WC.
cooler than WWE, but come on.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, now we got to figure this out. We gotta, we gotta step our game up, and
Mm,
because of that, so essentially WCW saved the wrestling business,
I agree.
and and that's the thing, like the notion, and I'm interested to know your opinion on this, because we never really got the answer to the question, right? We never got the this killed WCW point blank. But you know me, I've always said I don't like the notion that Hogan killed it, Bischoff killed it, Vince Russo killed it. I've never liked that notion. How did you feel about that? Did it change? I know you consumed a lot of stuff ahead of it, but at any point in time, did you feel any of those people were at fault?
No, I really felt like it was a joint effort. Like, I really think it's a little bit of everyone. And like these separate environments, like, yeah, it's easy to point the finger, but there's so many moving parts
Mm-hmm.
that it's almost impossible to blame like one person or one aspect. I think it was, I forgot who coined it, but somebody said it. They said it was just like a lot of little mistakes that kept building up
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of blow it up. And I think along the years, like, just things just piled on. If I had to choose one thing, though, I would say the backstage work environment
Mm-hmm.
was the big thing, because you had wrestlers, or you had all these wrestlers making all this money with creative control to some extent. So, in a business where it should kind of be performance based, you have people already making millions of dollars no matter what they did. You have people sitting at home. Yo, please read Nitro if you haven't already. There were people that literally sat at home. There were people, I have to say this because it's so crazy, that were getting paid on a regular basis six figures that they forgot about because they didn't have to come into work. Like, when they were doing line items, they would be like, "Oh shoot, this person is on like $750,000 salary." Like, when people, they say like how much money WCW lost, and it's like, tens of millions, and that sounds insane, but when you really, 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 really think about it, it's really not, because you're not getting any return on investment on these $1 million contracts. Like, you have people sitting at home collecting $1 million that are not putting into any other product, which is why, like, WWE's model had its faults, but that opportunity he gave you, and then you guarantee the upside. Like, what are you putting into this to make money? That energy makes a business grow. So that, to me, kind of ruined it.
We talk about books. It's another book I want to recommend too. Is Bobby the Brain Heenan, the bad wrestling bad boys tells it all. Came out about 2002. He discusses a lot of his issues he had with WCW. Coming to work. Bobby was like, how we listen to Jim Ross. He want to know what's going on. I mean, he don't want to know. He want to have that instant reaction. Well, Bobby wanted to know what was going on because he wanted to set stuff up. But the thing is, he talked about like how the reason why he went to WCW was because he could get things like health insurance and stuff. Where, and obviously a raise, less dates, where he couldn't get that with WWE. And that was the best part about it, was the alternative. We even talk about but like you said, performance based. They did those guaranteed contracts, and it was the gentleman. What was that? I would say it was not ironclad, but the little benefit that the NWO had, where every time they brought in somebody else would get more money. And the mismanagement of funds, definitely. Because at the end of the day, talent's going to talent. They're going to do whatever you allow them to do. Writers going to go as far as you allow them to go. You look at TNA, and there's another thing, like, if anybody would say, well, Hogan, Russo, Bischoff killed WCW, all three of us was in TNA. And TNA still, it's crazy that TNA outlived WCW.
Wild.
AEW Dynamite is, I want to say, like 49 episodes away from having more episodes than outlive WCW. But WCW, like you said, it's in this time capsule, and it's right here that it essentially lives forever. And we can't go back.
It does.
And they gave us so many stars, but I do love the fact that they broke all of this down, that they gave us so much. They gave us a lot of new information. And like for you and I, we read the book Nitro, so we knew. But for the people who didn't, and shout out to Guy Evans, he was on there. I love the fact he was able to tell his story. How did you feel not having Ric Flair on there? Somebody who is if Hulk Hogan is to the WWF, if even Shawn Michaels is to the WWF, Ric Flair is to WCW. How'd you feel about him not being?
I didn't even notice at first, but I think it's one of those topics that you just talk about so much. Maybe. Also, it was not a time he enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like, he was miserable in WCW for the most part, especially during the time that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I could see him pick, he's older, picking and choosing sort of what he wants to, what talking heads he particularly wants to do. I think that would be the main thing. Or, yeah, I think that's it. Because he's going to say, I think we've heard a lot of what he has to say about it. I'm glad him and Bischoff made up. But it was definitely a time where he was being taken advantage of, taken for granted, being told he was too old, having like start and stops. And then, he made a lot of money, but it wasn't fulfilling for him in the business. So I didn't miss him in it per se, but I don't think he needed to be in it.
It's crazy because when you really think about like WCW, once like and I'd be forgetting that it was NWA and George Crockett, promotions, Jim Crockett Promotions, that, oh yeah, it was WCW like early, like what, 90, 91 or whatever. But like Ric Flair was already like essentially a vet. But as a child, I always associated Ric Flair with WCW. He was the top heel, Sting was the baby face, And so I was like, wait, he's not there. But then when you also think about it, it's like, okay, 4 years, 5 years into WCW, he was essentially kicked to the curb. Like, he went and got Hogan and Savage, got them over there, got them paid, and it was like, all right, Flair, we don't need you. Oh, wait, yeah, let's put the belt on. Like those last few runs of him, when they started padding his numbers of, becoming 16-time champion, essentially it was like what, 11 through 12. I mean, 11 through 16. The rest of them was like, okay, it was more meaningful, but it was just like, okay, this person don't feel like working this day. Okay, we can pull you in.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I do wish Hogan was there because we
I want
didn't
to.
see him. Yeah, we didn't see him on the dark sides, especially the bash at the beach. And it's like, in regards to how you feel, whether he's gonna tell a lie or not, it still would have been interesting to hear a
Yeah.
fresh one.
I want to know. I would love to have heard Hulk's perspective because it's almost like y'all talk about him. It's like y'all talk about him when he not here. Like he has never been
Yeah.
able to defend
Mm-hmm.
himself of being blamed for the fall of it, and so many instances. Like from the start, he kind of started the resurrection of WCW. Like just him being signed turned business up. And then he was able to maximize the opportunity for himself financially and creatively. And then all of that sort of went to shit. And then now it's like all Hulk Hogan's fault. But his heel turn saved the business, if you could say arguably, because what would Nitro be without NWO? And would NWO, without NWO, would they had even had a leg up on WWE, even though WWE's creative sucked and they needed that push? But Hulk Hogan's at the center of all of that.
Yeah.
So I would love to have heard from him. I know he's wrote a couple books over the years, but I think this is kind of a new era of telling wrestling stories. Now, I think even if you do have an autobiography, I think now wrestlers are willing to share a little bit more than they have before because, you have to. I don't remember what I was listening to, but it said that professional wrestlers or anyone that works in professional wrestling are like natural habitual liars because you have to be.
Yeah.
Like even especially like in the beginning, like when you're trying to protect the business, like any little thing you have to like, wearing an eye patch in real life because you're blind in kayfabe. Like, you just kind of are ingrained to fabricate things. So it's like, I want to hear it now. I want to hear the real. Like we all know this business is toxic as fuck. Like you don't have to really protect anything now. Like we're in that era of like, give us the raw truth, give us the raw honesty. And I would love that from Hogan because he be capping. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. He mixes up his stories. I would have also loved to see Stone Cold on that too. Somebody who wasn't
nice.
given an opportunity and, essentially came to WWF, made a great opportunity. And he, it's like, I wonder, like, how did he feel? Like, yeah, I'm sticking it to y'all every week. I'm at the forefront. If somebody, when you kept giving me the dusty, you kept saying, nah, baby, that's what somebody else. You go keep it right where you're at. And all of a sudden, now he's the one kicking their ass. Like, that's crazy. Like, it's like you trade away a player. It's like if the Yankees were to trade Aaron Judge, and every time it's the curse of the Bambino, Babe Ruth. When the Red Sox traded him to the Yankees, and then he continuously beat their ass. So
Oh wow.
Yeah, and
83
they
weeks.
talk. Wow. So, but yeah, I think that overall though it's a great watch. I'm appreciative of $7 Productions. Brian Gewirtz said it would be something different, and they did. And it was a great 4 weeks. I'm like, man, I need to
enjoyed
watch
it. What I'm
another
like, what are we
episode.
gonna watch now? I think that's why we recorded this on a Tuesday night because we're like, it's over, which is how we always feel when one of the Vice docs ends. It's like that void of like, what are we gonna watch next?
Watch Dark Sides of the Ring until we get that next season.
I can't wait.
Yeah, same. Same. It's a lot of. Unfortunately, there will always be dark sides. It's like stories you be like,
Yes.
like, oh man, but you gotta watch them. You
Yeah.
know.
It makes you, I think, respect the business more. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the dark sides are really just stories of the dedication and like what came with that. Like I think of like a Luna Vachon. Like she really lives in my head rent free for some reason because she just wanted to exist in this business and become world champion. Like that's really all she wanted, and she
Mm-hmm.
neglected everything for that. Her children, her son, her family, her mental health, her physical health, her family, her friends. And it's really just the dark stories of people trying to make it in this business and how dark that is. Like the fabulous moolah, like these women who just were passionate about wrestling and wanted to do whatever they could. And they literally were like held, not, I wouldn't say held captive, but they were like abused on so many different levels just because that was the only way for them to get in the ring.
Yeah. Now, man, I'm thinking, what if they did a dark side on Sable?
Ooh, Sable?
Yeah.
Mm?
You know, I don't know if she probably can't talk about that lawsuit. I think
She
she'd
would
be
have to
private.
like be in it and be like super like fucking raw,
Yeah.
you know? Like all the women, honestly, from that era, if they wanted to fucking spill the tea, like I just think of Terry Runnels
Oh my
and just the
gosh, yeah.
little peek
Mm-hmm.
she, showed of what it was like being a woman backstage at that time. Now imagine if, she
Given
really
a
started
full
spilling the tea.
episode. Yeah. It dark side Vice really kind of killed the shoot era of interviews
Mm,
on the kind of like the RF video era. Those those because I mean granted podcasts also, so but even then they only give you but so much because they'll have like their layout of stories, so it's not like you can get so much information in one episode like you would a shoot
right.
interview. So,
True. 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 A little more structured, and I've seen criticisms on some dark sides and some of the
mm,
stories or the ways Vice portrays it. But again, like there's three sides to every story, and you can't get everybody's perspective on it. But I
mhm.
love that Vice at least has a perspective of an honest story as opposed to like whatever agenda that WWE has. And that's no shade to them. They're $1 billion company. Like there's marketing, there's narrative, like that's very important of like, what story we want to tell for our company. But Darkseid just is like, no, this is what it is. This is fucking horrible and this is what it is. Like, Jimmy Snuka killed his girlfriend. Like that's it. We don't care about no cage moments. Like this is a tragic story about someone's daughter, someone's sister. It's like that
Mm,
that human level that's not always easy to watch, but it's important. It's a part of
yeah,
life.
I'll say like my final thought is the thing I can appreciate is it doesn't come off as if they hate wrestling.
Right,
Anything Vice
right,
does,
right,
I have my issues with people who spoil shit, and it's like, do you even like this? Or they
right.
always so critical. It's like, but you don't have to watch. You can pick another form of entertainment. But
Mm-hmm.
I never get that vibe that they like. Maybe because they are, even though they tell on the dark sides, they find a way to celebrate the people. Like look at a Buff
Yep.
Bagwell to see his recovery story. Marty Jannetty, Brutus Beefcake. But you still get that feeling like, okay, these people still love wrestling. They still love the business. They just telling you it's not all peaches and cream.
Right, right. I'm excited to see what Vice has next, especially with $7 production.
Mm-hmm.
I am so here for it. Oh,
Yeah. Any plugs you want to get in? It's still a line from Shoemaker.
just follow Queen PR everywhere: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to Those Wrestling Girls and join us every week on Twitch. We're always live streaming, we're always partying on the interwebs. So make sure you follow us and join us.
All right, you can find me at Brian H. Waters on all social media platforms, X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.com/BWaters Productions. Of course, Wrestling Realm, everything over there. Of course, Ring of Wrestling, everything over there. It's all easy to find. But, Queen P.R, if you don't have any final words, we will let these people go continue their day.
Yeah. Join us next time.